Hello everyone, I'm Dennis from BizBrains and welcome to this webinar titled Scalable Rollout of CTC Compliance for Link Users. And given the title, I think it's safe to assume you are already familiar with Link, but just to be sure, Link is the integration platform developed and operated by us here at BizBrains. We have over 500 companies and organizations using it to connect with their own customers, suppliers, transporters, 3PLs, and many other kinds of partners around the world. I like to think of Link as a combination of an iPaaS and a managed service provider in one. And speaking of services, one of the key services you often need is global invoice compliance. And to provide this through Link, we formed a strategic partnership with one of the best in the field, namely Pagero. So along with our already built-in support for Pepper, we've seamlessly integrated Pagero's invoice compliance service into Link. So if you have Link, you have access to compliant invoicing. All you need to do is activate the subscription. And to tell us more about invoicing and CTC, we're joined today by Bo Holm Christiansen. Welcome, Bo.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dennis. Yeah, so my name is Bo, and I have been working for Pagero for about 8 years. And I work within sales, and in my daily operations, I support our customers that usually have a headquarter in Denmark, and then they need help with CTC compliance or e-invoicing compliance in their local subsidiaries across the world.
And
So,
before we dive into the details, Bo, just a quick note
yes,
to our viewers on a little practical matter. You can post questions in the chat or in the QA section. That's really both are equally good. Then our producer and Sophie will read them when they fit in or after Bo's section. So feel free to post questions along the way. Back to you, Bo.
yeah, thank you very much. So a good starting point is, of course, to talk a little bit about CTC compliance, what it is and what it does. And you probably all have familiarity with the B2G mandates or the public procurement mandates we had. Denmark is a good example where the government sector, they wanted to receive electronic invoices so they can automate their accounts payable process and get the efficiencies from that. But what we are seeing now and have seen for a while is that the tax authorities, they have a very big focus on VAT, and it's a good reason that they have it, and that is that there is a lot of fraud with VAT. And some of the numbers you see on this screen, some of them are a little old, but they're still very valid points that it is in the European Union up to 140 billion euros that are a part of VAT fraud annually. So it's large numbers, and that is of course why the tax authorities, they have a focus on this area. So they have introduced e-invoice compliance or CTC compliance, and CTC compliance stands for continuous transaction controls, meaning near real-time validation of or checks of the VAT on the invoice. So it's not only the SAFT reporting and the periodic tax reporting that you used to have. Now there's a lot more focus on the near real-time check of the invoices. So the way that Dennis and I have solved this to make it easy for you is, as Dennis already mentioned, that Link is connected to Pagero network. So we collect all the information that we need to make a legal invoice that's compliant with the country that you're operating in. So all the data flows from Link into Pagero, and it's designed to match Pagero's universal format. And what Pagero's universal format does is that it breaks down the data and then it restructures it to fit the target format. Again, the format that the tax authorities want to receive in that specific country. And then we deliver it by the mandatory infrastructure according to the legislation. So basically, again, to summarize all the steps of it, because you should view it as a compliance insurance that when you use Pagero and Link together in a certain country, then we always make sure that everything is handled compliantly. So we ensure that we have the proper format support. We make sure that we have the connectivity to the mandatory infrastructures. We make sure that you get everything back from the tax authorities. It can be technical receipts. It can be clearance responses saying that the invoice has been approved. And of course, this makes everything visible in Link, so you only have a single interface you need to work out of to manage your processes and integrations as well as CTC compliance. And then we ensure that everything is done according to the legislation in terms of integrity and authenticity. It could be digital signature, for instance. And then we always validate that the data that you send to us, if it doesn't live up to the requirements for the specific format for that country, then we stop the invoice and then you get a notification back in Link saying that you're missing out on a certain value. So that's a part of the insurance. Again, you will never send anything to the tax authorities that has not been cleared and validated by Pagero as a first step before the authorities do it. So that's a huge benefit. And you get all the documentation back. And then we also have the opportunity to compliantly archive your invoices and the returned documents if that's needed. But you can also have a repository in your own ERP system if you want to. But that is an opportunity.
Yeah, or I might add, you could also, of course, use the archive in Link. So you really have some flexibility here where you want to do the archiving. And I just want to, you already mentioned it, Bo, but it's a really important point here. When you have Link, you could ask then why not have the CTC service as a separate service? But you mentioned it, Bo, you get everything into Link, you get all the status, the possible errors, and so on. And you can. It's important to say that like you can do with all the other flows that you have set up, you can also with these flows utilize the notification mechanisms in Link and notify the exact right people depending on the actual document type and recipient and so on. So, but you already said that, but I just wanted to emphasize.
Yeah, great. So this is what it looks like from a visual point of view, that you have your purchase to pay and your order to cash processes where you continue to distribute data between you and your customers and your suppliers. And then you have Pagero in the middle that takes care of the tax authorities when you need to report data up to them. And as you see here, it's purchase to pay and order to cash processes. So it's not only just the e-invoicing, because the legislation does already and will in the future cover more document types. So you can imagine that you see yourself receiving an electronic order, sending electronic order confirmation, send electronic dispatch advice, sending an electronic invoice, and so on and so on. So the government or the tax authorities, they want to see a long audit trail of data to validate the transaction you made between you and your customer or you and your supplier. And of course, the whole centerpiece here is Link and Pagero tied together. So you get a lot of scalability in terms of message types as well as geographies, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and we will, of course, we will inform you along the way when these additional document types are coming up, so that you can be prepared to be compliant, because that's a really important part of why we have set up this cooperation between Link and Pagero. That is, a lot of things are happening, and Pagero are all about following every country, what is happening, when will it be activated, and so on. And this is really something that we don't have the capabilities to do within BizBrains. So it's important to say that we will follow everything and keep you informed in time to be compliant at all times.
Yeah. So this pretty much says that you are future proven with the Link and Pagero solution. Also, as of course you need to believe in us and trust us that when we say that we are a compliance insurance, that we live up to it. And of course it is in the agreements we will make with you. But on top of that, we have something called compliance reports. If any of your departments, they want to know more about a certain country and what the compliance requirements are in that specific country. And for that reason, we have something called compliance reports. And these are built by our regulatory affairs team. And what they do is that they constantly sit and monitor all the legislation coming out. And sometimes they're even advising countries before they roll out a CTC mandate or a e-invoicing legislation. So these are very, very detailed from a technical and a legal point of view, and these can be shared within the organization. So if anyone has any questions, they can read these reports. And of course, Pagero is available for questions as well, should that be a need.
Yeah, and maybe I can also comment here because if you choose to subscribe to this compliance service, then it legally it's or contract wise it's within your link contract, but you still have access to Pagero like these reports and also Pagero consultants, but you don't need to have like a specific contract with Pagero. If you have link and you activate the subscription, then you have the right to these services as well.
Correct. And also we have something called compliance alerts. And this is a newsletter that's specifically designed for a specific country. So if you're using Pagero, say in Poland, in France, and Spain, then on a monthly basis, we will send out a newsletter covering these changes have been made to the legislation. This is what it means technically. This is what you should be doing. And most oftenly, you don't have to do anything, but it's nice for you to have the documentation. And it's a part of Pagero's service to provide you with all that you need for your internal audits and so on. And this is very country specific, of course, but you can sign up for as many countries as you want to. And Pagero is covering plus 85 countries globally. And then we also have something called Compliance Monitor, which you can sign up for now already. And this is more of a general newsletter that covers the upcoming mandates and has like a short summary of what the legislation entails. And then, of course, we invite you to the webinars we host, where we walk you through the various formats. And these webinars are done by our regulatory affairs team. So they're very, very skilled within their area. And this is also the basis of the compliance reports that we have that are also shareable with you, as Dennis mentioned. So as you see, we have a lot of content that we can share with you to ensure your internal compliance. And then finally, we have something called Regulatory Atlas as well. And this is a interactive map where you can click on the various countries and then you can read about the legislation there. And this is good, of course, if you're doing research or doing a pre-study. But I want to mention that you have the opportunity to send Dennis a Excel sheet with the countries where you have subsidiaries, and then we are more than happy to analyze that one and return to you with a calendar of the upcoming mandates and how we would roll it out if we were in your shoes.
Yeah, I can just agree that please send over. It's a free service that we that you as a participant here at the webinar will be entitled to. So please send it to me and we'll get back to you.
And this slide is to showcase to you that the development of CTC compliance or e-invoicing compliance is going to grow in the future. And the reason that you see it grow exponentially is also because there are a lot of changes to the mandates along the way. Italy is a good example where on a monthly basis they change the legislation, which has a technical impact, of course. So this is just to showcase that you will see more and more complexity in terms of the mandates, and it's going to be harder and harder to keep track of it. But with Pagero and Link, you have everything standardized in the sense that you just need to use our two components, and of course ensuring that you have enough master data for us to be able to process the invoice. And this is also a good slide to show you that if you use local service providers, then you're building a lot of complexity into your IT landscape. And 5 years down the road, it's going to be very expensive and very difficult for you to start rolling it back because these are unique for each country where you set it up. So you're already future-proofing your solution by going with Pagero and BizBrains in this case, because we handle their complexity behind the scenes in our solution. All of these mandates are built into Pagero's solution as a standard.
Yeah,
Um,
and speaking of technical details, as you probably know, the way you have already, most of you at least, set up invoicing through Link is by connecting your internal systems like ERP to Link, and it's a little technical, but bear with me. You have a mapping between the ERP formats and what we call the CDM, the canonical data format in Link. You already have that if you have some kind of invoicing. And what we will do if you sign up for the Pagero compliance service is to make a mapping between the CDM that you already have and the universal format, the PUF that Pagero has. And then if something is needed that is not already in the CDM, we will set that up, extend the CDM, and also make sure that the data gets from the ERP to the CDM, and then we will do the mapping to the PUF, and then you are that is actually all there is to do inside of Link, um, technically.
so speaking a little bit about what I was just explaining with the technical complexity, when you do a global rollout, if you are a Danish company with a Danish headquarter, but you have a lot of subsidiaries across the world, first you need to understand, of course, what the legislation is about. And here you get a lot of support from Pagero via the documentation I already presented. And of course, we are available to support you by building a rollout plan as well. So that's the whole information part. Then the next step would be, if you go with a local service provider, would go out and do the whole procurement process of finding the service provider that you want to work with in that specific country, and then you would need to do the rollout. And the process for the first country would look like, as you see here, the scoping. You would have a kickoff with the project team with the integration. You would integrate, you would test it, you would do a pilot, you would go live. And then with Pagero, you always have 2 weeks of hypercare where we monitor the flows and see everything runs as it should. And if we see anything, then our support department, which is a department within R&D, then they will go in and fix the problem proactively, and then there would be a sign off. But this is kind of basic for any IT implementation. But the benefit you get is that once you have rolled out the first country with Pagero and Link, then you would just need to, if you take the next slide, Anne-Sophie, then we would only need to be doing the testing and then go live and sign off. And again, Pagero, our solution constantly updates to any changes in the legislation. So you would not need to have any ongoing projects going on all the time simultaneously with the mandates coming. We would just do the testing, go live, and then sign off. So as you can see, it's a very easy rollout compared to going with local service providers, both from a technical point of view, from a resource point of view, and of course from a financial point of view as well.
Yeah, and this was actually also my point with the little speech about mapping, because if you have done the mapping from the Link CDM to the PUF, and given there are no additional fields needed, then this simple process that you see here is really all that is needed.
So of course Dennis, he decided to work with Pagero, which we're very happy about. But if you want to hear it from other actors in the market, then IDC just released a report where they basically nominated Pagero as a leader within our space of e-invoicing compliance and CTC compliance. And Pagero is currently a subsidiary under Thomson Reuters, which has a lot of focus on tax, and they acquired Pagero about a year ago. So this is just to give you an idea about where Pagero is in the market if you have not heard of us before.
Yeah, and this is exactly why we we chose Pagero, and also we have a long relation through the cooperation in the European invoicing community. But this is exactly why we chose Pagero, because they are the leader. And this is also quite well illustrating why BizBrains did not choose invoice compliance as a key service, because as you can see, there are a lot of competition about being the best e-invoicing compliant provider, and we really chose to do what we do best, which is to make link and make integration in general less technical and more manageable, and not use all our efforts to be maybe number 2 or 3 or 4 here, because it's really something to take up this responsibility of and proactively monitoring everything that is going on. So we're very happy to work with Pagero on this one, so they can focus on that part and we can focus on what we do best.
So just to summarize for you why you should go with Pagero and Link. Again, Pagero is an insurance for CTC compliance or e-invoicing compliance. We take care of the whole process and make sure that you have the proper documentation to prove that you have done what you need to do compliantly. Then we have the in-house regulatory compliance team that constantly monitors all the legislation, that constantly has dialogues with the tax authorities about upcoming mandates and existing mandates. And these are available to you, and we have them available 24/7 in various countries, in various languages. And again, Pagero covers plus 85 countries at the moment. And of course, this is growing along with the legal mandates coming out. And then we have the CTC requirements, as Dennis and I just talked about, that everything is built into the network, and it's very easy for you to connect to Pagero network because you already have Link. So the whole compliance difficulties that you probably have if you have local service providers, that disappears. And then it's a future-proof and scalable investment because you can start with a single country and then you can roll out to more geographies along the way. And then as the legislation develops, then you can add more message types to the Pagero solution, both for the purchase pay and the order to cash. So in that sense, you're fully covered. And Pagero's R&D team, they have a full focus on continuing the scalable investment for our customers, so they don't need to have a lot of service provider. They can focus on just having one. And then, as we covered in the earlier slide, it's a very easy rollout for large global companies via Link, because you have the connector from Link, and then Pagero takes care of all the integration to the tax authorities, as well as handle the complexity in the processes and the data that needs to be distributed between the tax authorities and you. And what I see as a huge benefit, and I might be repeating myself now, is that with the Link connector, you're able to monitor all of your CTC compliance flows in Link, as well as the other integrations you have. So you have a single dashboard to use for the entire company, both for automating your order to cash and purchase to pay flows, which of course is a huge benefit for you, but also ensuring that you are compliant in the markets where you operate. And I see that as a huge benefit. And that's also why our customers, they decide to go with Pagero and Link.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, because you have CTC several places here, and also the title of this webinar is about C2C, or focusing on C2C. But it's important to mention that it's not only CTC. CTC is maybe now in 5 countries or so, but you mentioned 85 countries, and that shouldn't be neglected. That even though CTC um, is not in place in all these countries, and probably won't be in everyone, but there will still be some requirements that where you get an advantage of having this this service, even though it's not C2C. So that's important to say that it's compliance in a broader sense.
Correct. Correct. And we covered a little bit earlier also, but it is the various message type, but it's also for the various situations, like it's B2G for the government sectors, B2B between businesses, and then business to consumer as well. So again, this is a part of Pagero monitoring all the legislation coming out and then building a solution into the network where you only need to provide the proper data or the values within your format to Pagero. Then we take care of the rest.
Yes, and it's also a question of interoperability because although we at BizBrains have a lot of interoperability agreements, we don't have in the scale that you have at Pagero. So that might also be a thing. Let's say you want to just to give like a very exotic example, you want to connect to Japanese healthcare. That is not a connection that we already have, but I know that that's something that, given your presence in many countries, you will be able to set that up, and that's also something that you can utilize this Pagero service for.
That is correct. Pagero goes far back in the past with B2B integrations also, and had a focus on automation, meaning exchanging the data between a buyer and supplier. And in this process, we went out and made a lot of roaming agreements with other networks, and we do this on a global scale. So we can reach 16 million other companies at the moment. And of course, this keeps growing with more roaming agreements we make with other networks. And in many cases, the large customers that we work with, they come to us and then they say, we have a lot of orders coming from a Japanese customer. Their service provider is not connected to Pagero at the moment. How do we do it? And then Pagero goes out and talks to that specific network and set up a roaming agreement so that network and their customer can send data to Pagero so we can provide it to our customer. And then they get the benefits, both the customer and supplier in this case. And we expand the network, and so does the receiving network as well. So that
Yeah,
is
and
something we
although yeah,
proactively work with.
and
So so
although
so yeah,
Pepperl aims to make this interoperability easier with the e-delivery and so on, uh, for many years you will need additional ways of connecting because it will always try to keep up, but you cannot. That was at some point my thought that Pepper would actually take over, but it's not coming anytime soon, or maybe not at all. So this is really important, even though.
yeah, that is a good point, Dennis. It only you can talk about reach, about reaching other networks and your customers and suppliers, that not all of them will be using Purple. And at the same time, you have all the legislators that need to agree on legislation for e-invoicing compliance, and they can't really do it at a good pace and a good standardization. So that's why you see all these variables in the mandates coming out. And this is where Pagero and Link is putting everything together in the standardized solution that makes it easy for you. So behind the scenes, we are doing a lot of complexity that may not showcase in your daily operations.
Yes, and on that note, time is almost up. So, and I assume there are no questions because we haven't heard from Anne-Sophie. Is that correct?
That's great. No questions in the chat today.
But that might be because Bo covered everything, and
I
thank
hope.
you for that, Bo. And I just want to repeat here at the end that feel free to send over a list of the countries where you have connections and activities, and we will get back to you free of charge with a small analysis of what to do if you want to be invoice compliant now and in the future.
That
So
sounds good. And I would
looking, yeah.
sorry, Dennis, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just saying, if you have any questions regarding upcoming mandates, or it could be like even the VITA initiative going on in the EU, please feel free to reach out to Dennis and I. We will provide you with documentation to learn more about it.
And with that, thank you, Bo. Thank you, Anne-Sophie, and thank you everyone who has been watching. See you in the next webinar.
Thank you.